Welcome to Pedo Teeth Talk, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, a podcast show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professionals specializing in pediatric dentistry.
Thank you for tuning into Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you and your practice. Brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. I'm your host, Joel Berg. And thank you to our Pedo Teeth Talk sponsor, Hugh Freedy, for helping us bring you great content. We couldn't do this without them. Visit them at www.hughfreedy.com. That's HU-FRIEDY.com. We're here today with Rachel Mackay, social media expert, something really important to us in this time. She'll tell us why it is important to and how to establish your presence on social media. Rachel is a territory sales manager for a major dental manufacturer and dental materials and equipment company based in the Toronto area. She has developed a significant social media presence with the dental community under the handle at The Dental Whisperer and has coached hundreds of dentists to also leverage social media to grow their businesses. Prior to her career in dentistry, Rachel obtained a Bachelor of Kinesiology and Master of Science with a focus on neurorehabilitation, both from the University of Toronto, and spent 4 years working in game presentation for the Toronto Maple Leafs of the National Hockey League. Thanks for being with us today, Rachel.
Hi, Joel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to joining you for this podcast.
Well, Rachel, I'm really excited to talk to you about this. And, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, that we're all trying to emerge from, I think we're speaking today right at the time when states and provinces are beginning their conversations about sort of the phase one exit from this. And one of the things that comes up all the time is communication and how do we communicate. And that's why it's so important that we're going to talk about your experience and your expertise in social media. Before I get to that point, I'm really curious, because I know your background includes so many things, and now you're an expert on social media, advising dentists on how to do this. But you told me you used to work with the Maple Leafs, and I know you're also a former or maybe current professional figure skater. So how does a professional figure skater, Maple Leafs skater, become a social media expert? Maybe you could just briefly tell me about that. It's a little curious.
Yeah, it's a weird non-linear path, but I did competitive figure skating growing up and throughout university. And because of my experiences in sport, that's really what led me to study kinesiology at the University of Toronto. And from there, I got involved in research in medicine and healthcare. So after I finished my master's, I actually started getting recruited by a lot of medical device companies to do sales based on both my sales experience, but my science experience rather, but also my experience working as a brand ambassador for major brands such as the Toronto Maple Leafs. And one of those opportunities happened to be in dentistry. And I decided to take that one. And then while I was working in the field as a dental rep, there were a few dentists that I work with who had significant social media presence with 50,000, 100,000 followers in certain cases. And they explained to me that they really leveraged social media, particularly Instagram, to build their practices in a really innovative way that had never been done before in dentistry. So after seeing that, I thought, why don't I do that for myself as a dental rep? So that was really my inspiration for starting the Dental Whisperer account on Instagram. And it really took off in a way that I never would have anticipated. And I've discovered this whole community of dentists on Instagram and other platforms of social media where they use these platforms to build their practices and get patients through the door, but also as a forum for education and peer-to-peer mentorship. So in the past year and a half, I've become part of this community and become a speaker in this community on that specific topic. And it's really inspired and piqued the interest of a lot of clinicians as to how they too can utilize these platforms.
That's fantastic. Another great thing about our conversation today, Rachel, is we kind of represent different generations. And, I'm just going to declare you're younger than me. And, your generation is much more attuned to and used to using social media as a means of communication. The generation I come from is too. And I think it's kind of becoming universal. And another thing that I'm seeing, and this is what I want you to comment on, is you just talked about Instagram. And, if you ask my generation about social media, they might say Facebook. So if you could just comment on the world of Instagram dentistry and regarding how you establish yourself as an influencer, just briefly comment on Instagram sort of being synonymous with social media, it sounds like.
Well, Obviously, there's various platforms. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter. The one that's, I think, really interesting that's becoming more and more prevalent, especially since the COVID-19 crisis hit, is TikTok. And there are a number of dentists and dental students who are utilizing this platform. I see it being something that becomes really popular moving forward. But there's definitely demographic differences between these types of platforms. As you mentioned, a lot of the baby boomer and Gen X generations are more used to Facebook and maybe comfortable with Facebook, whereas the millennial and Generation Zs are more used to things like Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, as I mentioned. The one thing I always say to everybody is you really have to overcome your discomfort and anxiety around whatever platform it is that you decide to use. I would encourage you to use every platform possible and create content at mass scale on everything as much as you possibly can. But, even though you might not be a millennial, as you said, there are a number of dentists across North America within the Generation X and baby boomer generations that are using these platforms, and they're really pioneering this movement in the dental community. So you kind of just got to get over that initial anxiety and discomfort of just not really being familiar. And I always encourage people as well, use the people in your life who are more used to these platforms, who maybe grew up with it. If you have kids, if you have staff members who are of the millennial or Generation Z generations, empower them to help you to get started. And they'll help you kind of overcome that initial hurdle of anxiety and allow you to move forward and leverage these to your full potential.
Well, I think, in talking to everyone across the age groups and the different generations, it seems like now more than ever, we need to use social media. It's not even an option anymore in order to communicate our message. And I think the message now is, in encouraging patients to come back is safety. Dentistry has always been one of the safest professions from an infection control standpoint. And it really concerns me to hear, public stories, media stories about how be concerned about going to the dentist, et cetera, when I think the dental profession and providing outpatient dental care has been a leader in infection control, and we will continue to be. So that message must be communicated. So you talked about anxiety in using social media, and given that it is really a necessity as a means to communicate, what is the biggest barrier for most dentists in your experience in getting into social media for those who haven't done it before?
I would say it's exactly what you just touched upon. It's that initial anxiety. A lot of them are maybe afraid to put themselves out there on the internet. They've heard these horror stories of, you post one wrong thing, it's out there forever. They might be a little bit anxious to share anything personal about themselves or to, miscommunicate something that is misunderstood and, things like that. I think it's important for everybody to realize that we all face these kind of, anxieties about ourselves on social media, and you really just have to overcome it and be aware of what you're posting. Obviously, use common sense, but if you're not on these platforms, you're really missing out on fundamental opportunities to communicate and grow your practice. I heard a statement on the use of social media, which I thought was really compelling. And it said something along the lines of Instagram and social media is not a trend. It's a fundamental shift in the way that we communicate. So in order to stay relevant and to share our knowledge, especially in times like this, you just have to realize it's really an essential tool that every clinician now needs to utilize. So find people in your network, whether it's your staff, whether it's your associates, whether it's your family members, and get them to help you overcome those initial fears and anxieties that you may have.
Just get out there. The only way out is through. One of my favorite sayings. Just jump in the water.
Keep calm and get over yourself.
That's right. Yeah. One of the reasons I think, to your point about fear of what I might post incorrectly or maybe say the wrong thing, I think one of the bases for that fear is there seems to be sort of a commingling of social media being used for personal reporting, like, look what my family did yesterday, here's my new boyfriend, versus let me tell you about safety in my office. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? Does that make sense? And I think
definitely.
I think in establishing a presence, and my question therefore is, how do you know what kind of content to post, in terms of not being too personal, but you want to be personable? And you know what I mean? So how do you answer that question?
So it's really important to identify who is my target audience. Am I trying to target patients? And we're talking about pediatric patients here. So, parents of potential patients? Am I trying to target peers within the dental community? Am I trying to become a key opinion leader within the dental industry? Am I trying to be a mentor to up and coming dentists? There's no right or wrong answer as to who your target audience is, but it is essential that you identify it and then curate your content accordingly. I think a lot of people listening today are probably, looking to use social media as a tool in which to drive more patients through the door or communicate more effectively on more of a clinician to patient basis using social media. So if that's the case, try to curate most of your content so that it is educational, it's clinically based. And it is important, obviously, to show your face, to do it yourself, have your voice be heard, because that's what's going to allow you to stand out amongst everybody else and create that rapport and interpersonal relationship with your patients and their families. That's very essential, as we all know. But always go back to who is my target audience and let that be your guide.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of, differentiating yourself, there are companies out there that will manage your social media for you. Some of them do it very well. Many of them, however, seem to give you kind of templated information. So if you log on to, if you go to 3 different social media platforms of different dentists, you might see pretty similar content. Maybe they engage the same contractor. So how do you differentiate yourself is my question on social media from everybody else? Because we're unique. We have our own message. How do you do that?
It's funny that you bring that up, because since the COVID-19 crisis started, I've been even more active on social media than usual. And I've noticed a lot of accounts sprouting up from various offices in my local area here in Ontario. And I've noticed exactly what you're saying. It's all very similar content, similar photos, similar captions, similar wording. And so I figure it is these third-party companies sprouting up, and they even target me. They don't realize I'm not a dentist myself. So the thing about social media,
but you've got a lot of followers, so of course they follow you.
I guess so.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're bots or real people in certain cases as well.
Right.
I would always discourage dentists or anybody from using them. I think it's much more powerful if you are handling and managing your own social media content. What I like about Instagram in particular is that it's a great platform for relationship building. So let your personality come through. Let who you are as an individual, as a unique person, come through and resonate with your potential patients and their families. So I like to refer to this as branding. And there's, obviously different definitions. Some would define it differently than I would. But what I consider to be your brand is who you are as a person, what makes you unique, and what is your voice. So use creativity, use humor. That was a big reason behind the inspiration for my own handle, The Dental Whisperer. Obviously, having that dental name is very clear as to what I do and who I am, but it was something different. It was something kind of fun and unique. An example of a clinician actually in New York City, she's an endodontist. Her name is Dr. Stephanie Tran, and her Instagram handle is Her Holiness the Pulp. So it's kind of funny, it's kind of cute, it's definitely creative, and it captures attention. So in her page, obviously it's very clinically based. She's showing cases, she's showing radiographs, she's showing her day-to-day dentistry. But there's a certain lightness, and it's fun, and it's exciting.
She takes away all that anxiety people have about root canals, which have a negative impression, unfortunately, because they're not as bad as they say, right? So she does a good job of that. Let's take a pause for a moment for a word from our sponsor.
Hugh Freedy is the global leader in dental instrument manufacturing, offering pediatric restorative solutions that keep you performing at your best. For more information on Hugh Freedy products, visit www.hughfreedy.com/AAPD-crowns.
We are back with Rachel Mackay talking about social media. And for those of you who have not used social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc., now's the time to do it, because it's really important that we get our important messages out about safety, about our practices ready for you. There's no better way to do it. So, Rachel, speaking of getting back to business, how do you translate social media into real business, into business results?
So the key really is you need to foster meaningful engagement on social media with your target audience, and then that will essentially translate into more patients through your door and, bigger business growth. So if we're talking about Instagram, for example, what you can do in order to facilitate these meaningful engagements is utilize things like the comment section, the direct message feature, as well as the story feature. So for those who aren't familiar with what a story is, it's a 24-hour post that you can make. It can be video or photo based. And what's great about Instagram is there are options that you can use that are polls that are very interactive. You can post questions and prompt people to respond to them. And also there's a feature where you can send private direct messages, as I mentioned just now. So use this to try to target people within your network, people that could be potential business collaborators and, patients as well. So whenever you make a post on Instagram, let's say, always at the end of the post say, send me a DM if you have any questions, or send me DMs if you would like further information. And then that will prompt your target audience to communicate with you further. And then from there, you can really leverage this to get them into your office and, build a bigger patient base. Something else that I always encourage a lot of dentists to do is reach out to other local businesses that have a similar target audience to you. So it can be, pediatricians, it can be children's clothing stores, schools, other children's activities, centers, and try to leverage what they're doing on social media and collaborate to cross-promote amongst each of your target audiences, so that way you can target people that you may not have necessarily been able to. So now is the perfect time. We all have time on our hands to think about and do a little bit of research on who do I have in my, local area that could be a good collaborator, and then think about doing something like a giveaway challenge where you partner with another local business with a similar target audience to yours, and encourage people to follow your page, to comment in the comment section, send you a DM, and if they do so, they can automatically be entered to win a certain prize. And so you would collaborate with the other account that you might be thinking could be a good fit and go from there. It's very easy to do, and it's kind of outside thinking, and you would never necessarily be able to target certain individuals that could be potential patients otherwise.
I love that idea. You showed me a while ago, Rachel, how to do the story on Instagram, and I haven't really fully started it yet. I have to admit, maybe I'm the guy with anxiety you described, but now you're getting me excited to do this, and I have a feeling that once I and many others do it, they're going to want to just keep doing it all the time. My question then becomes, how often should you post? Because, if I like it, if I post something and, hey, that was pretty cool, I'm reaching people are commenting, it's going to inspire me to do more, but I guess it could be overkill too, right? Diminishing returns. So how often should I be posting?
Well, one thing I really like about the story is that it's very quick and it's easy and it's non-permanent. So a lot of people tend to gravitate more towards posting regularly on their story as opposed to on their feed, which is going to stay there forever or until they decide to delete it. So I find that the story can be a very effective way to communicate with your target audience. And what I noticed too about a lot of dentists, they're my target audience, right? So the app will show you who's active and who's not. So when I go through the stories and my direct messages, there's a little green dot next to every account that I can see is active. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people might not be posting on their feed, but they're all looking at the stories all the time. So, if you're a little bit anxious, that can be a good way to kind of get your foot through the door on these platforms. I try to encourage very consistent content creation. I don't think there's necessarily overkill, especially if it's varied content and in every post there's something valuable for your target audience to kind of consume from it. Mm-hmm. I think a minimum of 3 posts on your feed per week is a very good and realistic target.
Sounds doable.
Ideally, I think every day is best. But I think, obviously we have other things going on in our lives. This is another thing to add to kind of our to-do list. So work with your team in the dental office. Try to get some of your assistants, maybe your office manager, if you have a hygienist who's very comfortable with these platforms. Work with them to try to think of 3 different posts you can make every week. And that's a great starting off point. And what I would also encourage you to do is whatever you post onto Instagram, it's very easy to then share that onto your Facebook page as well. So by leveraging various platforms, you're going to have a bigger reach overall.
By the way, we didn't mention this, Rachel, but this is free, right? There's no cost to doing this. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely free. So if you want to get a little bit, fancier and more into it, you can purchase Facebook ads and Instagram ads. For most dental offices, I don't think that that's necessary. I think that if you start posting on a regular, consistent basis, as we just talked about, and it's high quality content, there's no need to pay anything for it. So these are great. They're free to use. So it's really our loss if we're not using them to their full potential. Yeah,
that's terrific. So, on the other side of the coin of frequency of posting, and I'm hearing you say 3 times a week, ideally daily, something short and sweet, so there's something. But what about finding the time? Pediatric dentists now, their offices are looking at reemerging, rescheduling 50 or more patients per provider per day. Mm-hmm. And, we're really busy. So how do you find time now, at the time when it's most important to use social media, to do this? How do you find that time in your schedule?
So, again, this is a fundamental shift in the way that we communicate. It's not a trend. It's no longer a question of should we do it. We have to do it. So you have to find that time in your schedule every single day to prioritize social media, even if it's just a 5 to 10 minute window. So something else you can do during this time while we're not all quite working and busy yet is start planning the content. Start thinking of some of the posts that you want to make, the captions. There are various apps, again, that are completely free on the App Store. If you just Google it, there's one called Plann, Plann. So that helps you create content that's, of a higher quality with a certain aesthetic. You can plan your captions ahead of time. So start creating a bank of content that then you can utilize when you're going to be a little bit busier and you're not going to necessarily have the time in your schedule that you will. But even once we return to dentistry after this COVID-19 interruption, I would strongly encourage everybody to build time every single day or, 3 times a week, as we just talked about, dedicated towards social media marketing.
It just needs to be part of what you do, like cleaning the water line,
Essentially, and as I mentioned, there are other people in everybody's life who are, comfortable with social media, that grew up with it, that understand it. So try to find these people and work with them, whether it's a rep like myself. I help create content for a lot of the dental offices that I work with, whether it's your assistant, whether it's your front office staff. Find those people and empower them to help you create a social media page for the whole office.
That's great. So for those of us, Rachel, who are already using social media, and I think that's a large proportion of pediatric dentists, how can they go to the next level to upgrade or to elevate their presence on social media?
So again, identify who is your target audience. Think about, are the posts that I'm making now really relevant to that audience, and are they as impactful as they possibly could be? Think about what your brand is, who you want to be, how you want to portray yourself, how you want to communicate, and reevaluate what you've been doing and think about how that aligns with your vision of your brand. Think about how consistently you're posting. Are you posting once a week, once every 2 weeks? Is there a way that you can be posting on a more regular basis? And then also think about the quality of the content itself. How good are your photos? How, attention capturing are they? Are they sustaining attention? Are you providing valuable information that's really going to help people and compel them to come and see you as a dentist? Think about the captions that you're writing. Are they grammatically sound? Are they, spaced out so that it's easier to digest and consume? So things like that, I would encourage you. Also think about photography. A lot of us are taking our own photographs. So especially in the dental world, for treatment planning and diagnostic purposes, we do a lot of photography in the dental office. So use that skill set to also capture images for social media. There are a number of resources for this. For example, there's Milos Miladinov. He is a Romanian dental technician and dental photographer. He has a book called the Dental Photography Book. That's a great resource for capturing higher quality photographs. There's Dr. Miguel Ortiz out of Harvard and Boston. He's a prosthodontist and another dental photography expert with a book called LIT, L-I-T. Here in Canada, there's someone named Dr. Gordon Chi. And he takes beautiful photographs, and he does a number of seminars, and he posts a lot of great educational content on this topic. So there are a number of ways that you can elevate your presence if you are already using social media.
That's fantastic. So, such great advice today for us, Rachel. And I guess we can contact you too. Is that okay to put a plug in for the Dental Whisperer?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, send me a direct message. Follow me at The Dental Whisperer. I'd be happy to share additional resources with you, answer some of your questions. I'm also going to be doing a number of webinars in the coming weeks on the topic of social media and dentistry and how to utilize it to jumpstart your career. So I'll be posting about that there. So please follow me. I'm happy to help you in any way possible.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for being with us today. And
thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Yes. So we're really happy to have Rachel Mackay, and I urge everybody to listen to this content and think about setting up a social media presence if you don't have one already. And thank you for tuning into Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you and your practice, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. We'll see you here next time.
Pedo Teeth Talk is brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, the show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professional specializing in pediatric dentistry. If you have any questions or comments, please email info@aapd.org. We welcome your ideas for future shows and guests. For more information on the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, visit aapd.org.